I'll give you another example of an externalising conversation. I'm meeting this family, and they have a boy called James. And there seems to be a correlation between the name James and Larry and ADHD. If you have a James or a Larry, more chance that child will have ADHD. A lot of children I see are called James or Larry. So, with ADHD, and so they come into my room, and James is about, I guess, 9 years of age, 8 or 9 years of age, and he's suddenly my room is in a mess, chaos, rains, and things have been turned upside down, and I sit down and I'm talking to the parents as James is like a tornado, not a typhoon. You have typhoons, don't you? He's like a typhoon going around my room. And I say, well, it's interesting to meet you, and so I'm trying to concentrate with all this clapping and banging going on. And, you know, I get to hear the family come to see me because they're concerned about James. And they tell me that James has ADHD, that he's taking some medication, but it's not enough. Surely there's more that can be done. I'd say, well, how did you find out about ADHD? And they said, well, the paediatrician told us, and this was confirmed by a psychologist, and so he's definitely got ADHD. So at least we know what the problem is. I said, well, that must be a relief, you know, to know what the problem is. They said, well, yes, but all we now have to know is what to do about it. Okay. So my chair starts going up and down, like I'm on a fucking horse. Okay. I look down, there is James. And I'm feeling precarious, you know, like, so I say to James, James, could you be a camel instead? Because I like riding on camels. Have you ridden on a camel? It's majestic and it's cruising, it's wonderful. So he tries to be a camel, so I'm going like this. And I'm saying to the parents, well, and it's very dreamy, it's lovely actually. I say, it's like I get in a trance state, you know. And I say, well, what sort of ADHD has James got? What type is it? We have to know what type it is if we're going to treat it. And then James stops, thank heavens, and goes off and does something else. And I say, what do you mean what type of ADHD it is? Well, there are different types of ADHD, like everything else. Which type is this? They look at each other, and they think about their paediatrician, and they say, with indignation, well, he didn't tell us that. Quite indignant about not being given this information. And I said, well, I don't know what we can do if we don't know what type of ADHD it is. And they said, well, maybe you could tell us. And I'd say, well, I don't have diagnostic acumen. So you need to see someone with diagnostic acumen. Does anyone here have that? Diagnostic acumen? No? Anyway, I don't have diagnostic acumen. So I can't do that. I said, but maybe we could figure it out. Okay? Maybe James could help us. James, do you know that you've got ADHD? He nods his head and then goes on doing what he was doing. What sort of ADHD have you got, James? He pays no attention. And I said to the parents, have James ever seen his ADHD? I mean, it could be anything. It could be like a green Martian, for all I know. And so I turned to James, what colour is your ADHD? Okay? I get his attention. Okay? He says, I don't know. I say, haven't you ever seen your ADHD? He said, no. He knows you've got ADHD, but he's never seen it. Well, how do you know you've got it if you haven't seen it? He thinks that's a very good question. Okay? How does he know he's got ADHD if he's never seen his ADHD? And the parents think that's a bit strange. Was this second opinion a good thing to be doing? And so I say, look, I think I know what sort of ADHD James has got. I think I know now. And they look relieved. Okay, well, give us the diagnosis. And I'd say, well, I saw a little boy 2 weeks ago. His name is Freddie. James's ADHD looks just like Freddie's ADHD. The parents think, well, this is promising. We're getting on track now. Okay? And I say, well, the reason I think that James's ADHD is a twin brother to Freddie's ADHD. They're twin brothers. The parents think, you know, they thought they were getting something. So, and I say, well, James, have you got a brother? Oh, he knew he had a brother. He said yes. Is he a twin brother? James knew that he wasn't. Children are fascinated by twins. So he knew what a twin was. And so I say, well, tell me, did you know that your ADHD's got a twin brother? Now he's really excited. His ADHD's got a twin brother. And I said, look, do you want to know what it looks like? He wants to know. I look at the parents, they want to know. Now the parents are getting interested, because this is a fun, light-hearted approach to a deadly serious situation. They can see a few possibilities because James is getting engaged. So they come on side with me. So I go into my office and I come back with a painting of Freddie's ADHD. Freddie gave me a copy because I have these archives, therapeutic materials I share with others. I do this a lot. It's very helpful. So I come in and I say, here's Freddie's ADHD. Do you think yours looks like this ADHD? We all study it. And his parent says, yeah, I recognise this ADHD. This looks familiar. And so there's a general consensus that James' ADHD is a twin to Freddie's ADHD. And I said, well, how do we confirm this? We have to know for sure before we can take action. And so the parents say to me, well, how did Freddie know what his ADHD looked like? So Freddie was very clever. One night, he woke himself up in the middle of the night without any warning, and his ADHD was off duty, lazing around the place, and Freddie caught him napping. Before he could jump back in Freddie's life, Freddie took a picture of him with his mind. And the next morning, he painted ADHD. And so, but I don't know how James could find out what his ADHD looks like. I don't know what would work for him. So people talk about it for a while, and no one seems to know. And suddenly James has an idea. He says, I can wake myself up in the middle of the night. Now that's a good idea, James. And take a picture of my ADHD. So the parents say, look, okay, so this is the plan. You then go home, and James is going to do this so that we've got ADHD's number, so we can then figure out what ADHD is up to. Because what ADHD does will be true to ADHD's character. Is that clear? So we'll get to understand ADHD, we'll figure out how to trick ADHD. So I say, the parents say, well, what should we do? Because they've always had this homework, you know, behavioural management and all this sort of stuff. And so, pretty heavy stuff. And I'd say, look, the best thing for you to do, wait for it, and they're getting priming themselves, hoping it won't be too much of a burden, do nothing. I want you to do nothing. Well, maybe we could remind James to do this before he goes to sleep. I'd say, no, no, no. ADHD will get wind of it. You know, it would be giving him a warning. Say nothing. But in the morning, when James wakes up, every morning for the next week, say to him, did you do it, James? When you're sitting down at breakfast, both of you say together, in unison, and you can practice here to get the lines, did you do it, James? Okay. Practice, they practice. James, did you hear that? When you hear that, James, your mum and dad will be asking you about ADHD. And they won't say anything more. They'll just say, did you do it, James? If you ask what, they won't tell you. Anyway, so they went home with this plan, right? And so the first, when they came back to the next meeting, I heard that story. On the first evening, in the morning, when James was sitting at breakfast, they said in unison, did you do it, James? He said, do what? You know, thinks they're crazy. Oh, never mind, they say. The second morning at breakfast, they say, did you do it, James? This time he knows what it's about, but he hadn't done it. On the third morning, when they go to say, did you? He says, I've done it. Okay? He woke up and he took a picture of ADHD with his mind, and he painted it that morning. He brought this into the next meeting with him, and you should have seen this ADHD. It was terrifying. It was a mutant ninja version. It was a twin of Freddie's, but it was a mutant ninja version, mutated version, much more powerful. And I can understand why James's life was so much out of control. And so we put ADHD over here, and we got into a conversation about what this ADHD was up to. It was wrecking James's friendships with his teachers. It was finding his family in the works and his friendships with his parents and so on. We got to explore how ADHD was affecting his life. Okay? That's another example of externalising conversation.